And we are live. What's up, STS Nation? And welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the show that brings you the best guests in all of true crime. And these two are so good, they're here every week, once a week. You're looking at America's most respected detective. Phil Waters spent decades in law enforcement, becoming an expert at obtaining criminal confessions. Spent 23 years working as a homicide detective in the Houston Police Department. He investigated more than 400 homicide cases. He's also a Marine, the owner of Kindred Spirits Investigations, and he starred in the show The Interrogator, which he wishes was called The Interview Room, as he says he's never interrogated a single person. The man you don't see, who's running a couple minutes late, is Jonathan T. Gilliam, both a Navy SEAL and former FBI special agent, and the author of Sheep No More and the kids' book, The Adventures of Team Little Bigs. A couple of housekeeping notes, as you know. Please follow us on Facebook, Insta, Twitter. It's at Podcast STS. Please follow us and my dear mother on Patreon. Support us there or get a YouTube membership. I need to get all your emails in case one day we move locations. So on Patreon, I would get your email. If you can, drop your email into the comment section. We'll get you on our newsletter. And as my 8-year-old daughter always says, please hit that subscribe button and the like button. It gets the algorithm chugging. So to start us off here, there are actually two pieces of relatively new news, one newer than the other. And oddly enough, both broken by People Magazine, both pieces of news. The first one, Phil, is about that restaurant we heard so much about called the Mad Greek. Investigative reporter for People, who's actually a very good crime reporter, reports that Koberger ate at the Mad Greek not once, but twice to grab a vegan pizza. It's one of the few vegan options in the area. It is unclear who waited on him or if they even interacted, if he interacted with any of the victims in this quadruple homicide. And curious from a law enforcement standpoint, your standpoint, if you were investigating this case, how critical would it be for you to get information from the people at this restaurant?
Well, excuse me. Thanks for having us back, Joel. This is
every week
becoming something that I really look forward to every week. A vegan pizza. So that's kind of a culinary oxymoron, right? I think that is a critical piece of information because what you're trying to do, what I would be doing and what they are doing, these detectives, is putting together what I've talked about before, a psychological profile or a psychological autopsy on this guy. Kind of want to know how he thinks, what makes him tick, what are his likes, what are his dislikes, and so forth and so on. So it's been revealed through the investigation that he is a vegan. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, whatever it is. And he has frequented this location. And I believe two of the young ladies worked at that restaurant, if I'm not mistaken. I think maybe Xana and Maddie, or was it
Xana and Maddie, I believe, correct.
Yeah. And so one of the big questions is, what is his relationship to these people? Why these four people? And what is starting to come out to me, and looking at some of the new information that's being provided, is that Ethan was collateral damage. He was there as an unknown to this evildoer. And again, I won't, for the people that are listening, I will not speak this person's name, but so that becomes part of these affirmative links that I talk about in connecting the evildoer to these 4 young people. And this is just another piece in this huge puzzle to make that connection. Now, Jonathan and I, when he gets on here, we have talked about in previous broadcasts about the why. And I have made the statement, and I stick by it. There's only 3 reasons why people murder someone: sex, drugs, or money. Don't believe there's money involved here. Don't believe there's drugs involved here. So that leaves one reason, and that's the sex part. And that doesn't mean that to suggest that he was in there for the purpose of committing a sexual assault. And I talked last time about a sexual component here. So there was something that drew him, and I believe from what I'm seeing that's being revealed now, is that it was to the 3 women, the 3 females involved, and maybe specific to Maddie and to Exana, based on their possible interaction at that restaurant. Now, I've read also where there was apparently some Instagram contact between the evildoer and a couple of the young ladies. So it all seems to start to connect.
Yeah. So the Instagram point. So that was also a People Magazine article by this same investigative reporter, and they have a source close to law enforcement who says that Brian Kohberger was in fact messaging one of the female victims. So it's one of the 3. We don't know who. And sent her multiple direct messages. And according to this law enforcement source, the quote is, he slid into one of the girls' DMs several times, but she didn't respond. Basically, it was just him saying, "Hey, how are you?" But he did it again and again. Now, the thing with DMs on Instagram, Phil, I know you're on Instagram all day posting your Speedo photos. but hey, you're in Hawaii sometimes. So
well, I am, but my Instagram is only relegated to my business. I took my personal stuff off of it after a certain event that occurred a couple of years ago. But go ahead.
We won't go into that. So anyway, the thing about Instagram is that you could get direct messages and not even know it. So if you don't accept it. So these 3 victims, whoever was getting the messages, may not have even known it. But do you think a non-response from them could have been enough to maybe trigger Kohberger into doing something?
Well, the short answer would be yes. I mean, something triggered him. If he is, and I've said from the beginning that his appearance to me and watching his mannerisms and so forth and so on is that he appears to be awkward, at least in social settings and that kind of thing. And I think some of that's been borne out by some of the people that know him or grew up with him or had contact with him on a fairly regular basis, that he was that kind of a person. And of course, this is all speculation on my part. I don't want anybody getting all shook up saying that I'm making some sort of, blanket statement here that's forever and ever amen. But from what I've seen and what is now being revealed, and I'm still sticking with my sexual component to this thing, whether whoever the one was that he was making these DMs with, sending these things to, either purposely ignored the contacts or just didn't see them. Therefore, it still communicates the same message to him, which is, I'm not responding to this stuff. And if there are repeated attempts to contact, And there is no indication that those were ever followed up on by the person he's sending the DMs to. And we don't know what the context or the order of things might have been in terms of contact with them at the restaurant and when these DMs were sent, and kind of the order of events. And so it may have been, and so what I would be interested to know is what was the date of the last DM that was sent in relation to the date of the murders. So was there something that happened or didn't happen that was it for him, and he's going to go serve whatever retribution he feels like he is due.
I find it, I don't know about you guys, but when you watch Phil, you can tell he's putting a puzzle together in his head using those investigative chops. But back to, there's a little more information from the Mad Greek that I want to just get your take on, Phil. So the reason, so they're basically, they were told by law enforcement, all the employees at the Mad Greek, not to speak to the media. They're basically under a self-imposed gag order. So the way they got this information was from a recently departed employee who was able to speak. That's how People Magazine got this information. And this person said that Kohberger only stood out because he had a particular order. As a strict vegan, he made sure to check that his food had not come in any contact with animal products, which is I don't know if he went into the kitchen, I don't know, but that's how they remembered him, which I thought was interesting. And then the other piece of information, this is what I wanted to get your take on. According to this same report, law enforcement has collected surveillance video from the restaurant and surrounding businesses. So, Phil, if you're the lead detective on this case, which you had been on 400 homicide cases, or many of them, how far back are you going on this video? Because he was in town since August. And what are you looking for on surveillance video from this restaurant, potentially?
Well, I'm sure they've done this, because a lot of this video stuff is going to be dependent on the system that's in that store, in that restaurant, and how quickly does it override itself. So I've seen some systems that they'll overwrite in 48 hours. I've seen some that will overwrite in 45 days. I've seen some that are kept on a server until they are manually deleted. So that would depend on the system itself. And you would go back to, if I'm the guy and we know that the evildoer is in the area in August and they have a memory of when he may have first started coming in there, then you would go back to the moment in time that it's believed that he is now in the area. And I would think, of course, it would depend on how he paid for these meals. I would think that if he paid with them with a credit card, they would be able to go back into their records and payments and determine the specific day that he was in there, which would keep from having to go through hours and hours and hours of video to try to see if you can pinpoint what day he may have been there, if that video is available. So there's a way to kind of pare this stuff down where you're using your time efficiently and effectively with the video evidence that may be there. So it would be, that's what I would do. I would go back to that moment when we know, and look at when the girls were employed there, and look at what days that they were working. I mean, go back into the schedules. I mean, you can really pare this stuff down before you even start looking at videos as to, this is what I would do. I would find out what days those girls were working. Then I would go and see if we have the video for those days. And let's go back to August as our kind of our benchmark, our starting point, and then go through, and whatever days those girls were working, that's the video that we want to see.
Phil, I forget the exact number, but there were like 4 to 6 Moscow detectives working this case at the height, and something close to 60 federal agents.
Right.
If you had to guess right now, how many people are working this case full time still?
Oh, I would imagine it's pared down quite a bit. I would not be, and again, I'm just speculating here, having been involved in cases similar to this, where we had a whole cadre of different agencies involved, and then eventually gets down to kind of the lead pair that's running it, and maybe one liaison with the FBI. In my experience, we liaison with another sheriff's office that's working with us on a particular case that crossed county lines and that kind of thing. So
Look
I would
who's
say
here. Look who's here.
there he is.
The other half of Phil and Gil is here. What's up,
What's
Gil?
going on, man?
Running around today, running around.
Fashionably late.
We have the whole crew here on a casual Friday. So
but to answer your question, Joel, I would say at this point, I would imagine they've got a couple of detectives at Moscow PD assigned to it, maybe a couple of FBI guys, and maybe a couple of state detectives, just to have a functioning unit that is now putting the reports together and getting this stuff disseminated.
Before we get to this comment up here, Justin Woods, if you're out there, there's a comment from him where he says, I attended class with Brian Kohberger. He had no injuries or change in personality after the murders. People better wake up. I don't know if he means that he's potentially innocent or that he's a total psychopath and did this and had no remorse. But either way, Justin, hit me up at survivingthesurvivor@gmail.com, because I would be interested in speaking to you further. Now, Mickey O'Shea is a friend of the show. He's responding to Kelbell, who was asking about, we know this search warrant was unsealed this week. The doc says nothing was taken from the office, which is what I had seen the reporting to be as well. So they took stuff from the Pullman, Washington apartment of Kohberger, but nothing from the office. Mickey O'Shea says they would have a hard time getting a warrant to take a server compared to his personal computer tower at home, and data may be stored in the cloud. We'll get to the search warrant unsealed, but Jonathan, do you make anything of the fact that nothing was taken from his University of Washington office? And is Mickey O'Shea right about this?
Well, I'm not sure about that particular university, so I don't know how they work on the cloud. I don't know if he takes his computer in and brings the computer home. So that's another thing that some people do. They'll have a computer that they work on personally, and but they take it into the office and use it. So I'm not sure exactly what the details are of that. I mean, the investigators have done such an incredible job that I'm sure that if they considered that there was something there that they needed, they wouldn't stop until they found it. I mean, they've done such a good job so far. So it may just be the fact that he didn't spend a lot of time there. I mean, he's only been there since August. So that's basically, I think, what it is that the things that he did, probably he did more from his home and or on his phone. So, but I don't know. I don't want to speculate on that, because whoever wrote that search warrant, they knew what they were doing. So there was probably a reason why they didn't take anything from the office.
And now, so back to this search warrant. Among the things that were found was animal hair. And Michael Bodden, who's a famed forensic pathologist, he's quoted as saying on Fox News, if they found one animal hair, and I've been involved with this in the past, which came from the dog that was at the scene, that's a home run for the prosecution. Phil, there was a dog in the house named Murphy. If the animal hair, we don't know if it's a dog hair, if it matches to this dog at the King Road home in Moscow, is it a home run for the state?
Well, with all due respect to Dr. Baden, an investigation like this is never solved or successfully prosecuted because of one particular piece of evidence. So I would say in context, if there is a dog hair and it does belong to Murphy, then that is just another piece of this huge puzzle that is going to further clarify his presence in that house. It's going to put him there in a way, because that, that transfer of that evidence, it's super, super important that his DNA footprint or trace evidence footprint or fingerprint footprint is there at the scene. But if he has trace evidence and DNA evidence of the victims at his residence, that is huge. That is what we would call a wrap. So we are wrapping those scenes by two different distinct pieces of evidence that are crossing over. So if that dog hair wraps to Murphy, that is going to be huge. He's going to be hard pressed to explain what Murphy's hair is doing in his house, his firm.
Wow.
Remember, it's the totality of the circumstances. That's what they're looking at. They're not looking at that one piece, and that's what Phil's talking about. If you say, well, if they find the dog hair, that's a slam dunk case. It's the slam dunk case if it fits in the totality of the circumstances. So if they just found a dog hair, they have to also find something there at the scene, like Phil was saying, so they complete this circuit. You call it a wrap, and so that's a good way to look at it. So they're trying to complete the totality of the evidence. And right now, I mean, the picture that they've painted puts him around the house, puts him moving towards the house, systematically turning off his phone so that he structures a way where doesn't look like he's guilty, yet he's caught on camera there. And then the same thing when he goes back and the camera or the phone comes back on. All these things create a picture, and now you have the DNA inside. If they find that the hair or anything like that, then it kind of completes that whole wrap. That's the way we look at these things. We want to get a picture, because you got to remember, right now they know who the alleged killer is. Now they're working for this thing that they give the prosecutor, so the prosecutor can get a conviction, right? They're also looking to see if he did anything else or if there's other people involved. But by and large, they're building a product for the prosecutor right now. That's what they're doing. So that's why they're looking for everything they can put inside that cup to hand to that prosecutor.
Geeking Me Out says, I really enjoy listening to Phil and Gil. They're my favorite STS guests, and mine too. Now, Twisted ASF, who corrected the spelling on Brian with a Y in another comment, writes, and this is something no one talks about. So what if Brian is innocent? Gil, what if, or Phil, what if he's innocent?
Well, I tell you,
if ifs and buts were candies and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas, right? Look, the deal is that he is presumed innocent. That's the way the system works. That's what he is guaranteed, to be presumed innocent. So to answer that question, that will be borne out in the courtroom. The prosecution will present their evidence. The defense will present their defense. And remember, he doesn't have to prove he wasn't there, because it's presumed that he's innocent in the beginning. The burden is on the state. And so if he is, and in fact, that's why they render a verdict of not guilty. They don't render a verdict of innocent, because none of us are innocent. So the presumption of innocence is a legal term that guarantees that person is going to get a fair trial and get the best defense that they can get. So what if he is innocent? That will be found at the trial. And if that jury comes back and says you're not guilty, then your what if will be answered.
Phil, did you ever have a case in your 400 homicides where you knew the guy was guilty and he got off?
Yes.
How difficult is that?
I only had two. I had about a 90, I'd say about a 98.5% conviction rate. I had two cases that were acquittals. The people that were acquitted were guilty as homemade sin. The investigation showed that, the evidence showed that, and the failing in those two cases were the prosecutors. One was the worst presentation of a murder case I've ever seen. When I was on the stand, I was questioned as though she was the defense attorney. She wouldn't let me finish an answer.
That's odd.
It was incredible. And I think it was actually her first. She'd been a DA in financial crimes for a number of years, and they had demoted her. She was effectively the chief. They demoted her, put her into a trial bureau, and that she was like a number 2 or number 3, and this was her first murder. So horrible prosecution. In fact, the defense attorney who I knew, who I'd been up in some pretty tough cases with, and remain undefeated with him, but he didn't even have to ask any questions. I mean, it was pretty funny because when the time came for him to question me, he got up and he asked me something like, what's your favorite color? I mean, it was some question that had no impact on anything. And then he sat down because the prosecutor did all the work for him. The other case was just a prosecutor that was, he tells me after his completely lackluster, and it was a gang killing, and the witnesses were gang guys in the same gang, and he handled the witnesses in the worst way possible, didn't really care. After he gave this lackluster closing, he informs me while the jury's out deliberating that he is leaving the DA's office next week. So that explained he was just checking boxes on this prosecution. So those two cases, yes, those guys did it. Wow. All the evidence, all the trails led to them. They were guilty, and in that unfortunate circumstance, the prosecution did not do its job. And so the jury, really, I sat in the trial for the closing, and of course I testified in both of them. And I knew when I walked out of there that these guys were going to get acquitted. I mean, I knew it, felt it in my gut, and that's sure enough what happened. The rest of them, they're either in prison or they're on death row, or they've been rehabilitated. Let me correct that.
You know what? Out of all that, you know what stuck out the most? I want to know what Phil's favorite color is.
When you see the whole story. You see this wall.
So this next comment.
Wait, I want to point one thing out real quick. I just was writing some talking points for Fox News the other day, and I, it's very strange. It says you can use this in court of law, of course, but I do find that it's very interesting when these big murder cases occur, right? And they're big and salacious and in the news. Isn't it strange how we have repeated names? So this guy's named Brian. You got the guy in Massachusetts. It's named Brian. When it was Peterson was all the rage there for a while. Everybody killing somebody in their family had the last name of Peterson. I mean, and this is a very strange thing. I've seen this numerous times when this occurs.
What do you think that is? Is that just serendipity? What is that?
Something in the DNA.
It's something strange, but he does spell his name B-R-I-A-N, and the other guy spells his name B-R-Y-A-N. So,
yeah.
And then there was also Brian Laundrie with Gabby Petito. Brian Laundrie also.
There, I've completely forgotten. See, that's what I'm talking about. This is
well, it always comes in threes, right, Jonathan?
Plane crashes too.
It always comes in threes, right?
Yeah.
Threes. Numerology is real, everyone. Numerology is real.
Well, I'm not going to go that far. I'm just going to say,
So this next one is from Chris Hannison. And this again, the question that no one can answer is why. So Chris poses this: is there an anti-law enforcement angle? PhD level, but working as a security guard who got denied a police internship, power-hungry weirdo who got screened out, girl ignoring message, could have been the final trigger. Jonathan, Gilliam, anything here?
No, I think it's the total opposite of that. I think, based on what I'm seeing, again, the totality of his behavior, the things that occurred in his life, he wanted, it seems like he was really fixated on the military and law enforcement when he was younger, when he was heavier. And then as he lost weight, he kind of found his niche because he's book smart. So that's his niche in the law enforcement area. Remember, or you have to realize that a lot of these people who go through and become PhDs in law enforcement and criminal justice, they don't necessarily work in the criminal justice system. They stay in the schools and they do research. But some of these people actually then go in and will try to be administrators in some form or fashion in law enforcement. And they do play a part in law enforcement. And I think because these statistics that we use a lot of the times that come from outside of the FBI, even though I was in the FBI, I don't trust their statistics a lot of the time because they're highly politicized. And so you'll see numbers that don't really add up. Not always, but sometimes. But with these types of criminologists, they actually do a lot of work with these statistics and things like that. So I think he found his niche. But the problem was he made a statement on some post that I wish I would have copied that because I don't know where it came from. This was years ago when he was younger. And he wrote that he's dead on the inside, that he has no feeling whatsoever. And when his parents dote on him, or he used different words, but his loving parents would say something, he would feel nothing. So at some point there, because of could have been because of the bullying and because he's smart. There's a fine line with people who are very intelligent. I know Phil can back me up on this. A lot of the gang members and the people that you meet that do homicides because they're of ego or they're involved with a gang or something, a lot of times they're not real smart. These are people who grow up in the inner city or they just blow off school and they're not real smart. Then you have these people like this guy who is very intelligent from a book standpoint. And so what you have a lot of times is you'll have somebody who's extremely bright and they have this ability to do certain things, like go through a PhD program, which is not easy, but you'll have other people, whether it's a parent or somebody, who will tell them that they're nobody and they'll make them feel like they're nobody. And it causes this crack in their psyche where if they get doted on and they get put down, something occurs in there where these people, their desires and their deviations, they just go off a deep end. And so, I mean, we all have some trigger points. When we were younger, something happened. So people are scared of dogs because they got bit by a dog when they were younger. But with people that are really intelligent and they're spoiled and kind of abused or bullied, there's a crack that happens. And I think that's where all this goes back to. I think the law enforcement aspect of it just probably has to do with the fact that that's what he wanted to be a cop. He wanted to be in military. And this was the niche that he carved out for himself. And as he got deeper into it, I would imagine that whatever desires he was already having kind of took on another realm as he studied these things and became fascinated with these things. That's what I'm seeing when I look at his overall persona and the way that he was to the people that he worked around, the people in the school. That's just kind of the way I get it.
Always an interesting take from Gil and Phil, or Phil and Gil. Now, back to this Fox News article. We were talking about this, and Jonathan, I don't know if you were here yet, but Dr. Michael Bawden, the forensic pathologist, was quoted by Fox News in a Fox News digital article, saying that if this animal hair matches to the dog, you were here because you were talking about how it was sealed. Yeah. But now he went on to say, and this I didn't see. So if someone out there in STS Nation can help clarify this, he says they recovered shoes which did not have a diamond imprint on it. Remember, there was a diamond imprinted shoe at the scene, so there may be information for both sides. assuming this is true, Phil, that they found a shoe, because I didn't see that among the items seized in this search warrant. But if they pick up Koberger's shoe and it doesn't match the print, the shoe print found at the scene, does that tell you anything or not necessarily?
All of it tell me is that I would assume what they did as well was check to see what kind of shoes were being worn in that house. I mean, for all we know, Ethan may have been wearing that shoe. So if it was determined to be a men's shoe, now I can tell you that I have obtained shoe prints, bloody shoe prints, and we've sent them off to the DPS. They have a shoe print specialist at DPS here in Texas that would tell you this resembles this particular type of shoe. They wouldn't go as far as telling you the size and that kind of thing because they weren't going to get that exact, in further testimony in court and so forth and so on. So not an exact science. However, they could determine if you had a really good print, what the brand was, what the model was, and so forth and so on. So that is what was done here. And I don't know where, again, I don't know where the good doctor is getting that information, but if they did not seize any shoes at the apartment, it's because they didn't find a shoe that they were looking for. I mean, you wouldn't just go in there and just scoop up a bunch of shoes. You might, but I'm sure, and when they're doing the inventory there and they're looking what they have, they did not find that specific shoe. So to me, it's just kind of I guess if we were in Vegas, we'd call it a push. It's something that they had at the scene. Perhaps they did not find it in the execution of that search warrant. Maybe it was found somewhere else. I mean, who knows? But or maybe Ethan was wearing that shoe. So I don't think it's in the big, as to use the word that Jonathan has used, in the totality of this discussion and this investigation, I don't know that that's really neither here nor there.
Phil,
I think.
Go ahead, Jonathan. Go ahead.
Well, I think it'd be really interesting to see if they looked at the car, if there were any footprints in the car. He's a tall guy. That's a low car. And what do we normally do when we get out of the car? We push the door with our foot. So I'd be eager to see if there's any of that pattern in that car whatsoever. And also,
remember, he cleaned it.
Yeah. And also that southern route that he took to go back home, I am very concerned that they actually go and look at that and see if there's anywhere along that way that he might have tossed those clothes. I mean, if he had Dickies on and they found a receipt for these Dickies clothes, if they go back to Walmart and they find out that he bought dark colored Dickie clothes, that's going to be kind of a hit on him. And then that southern route, if that would be where I would think he hid or disposed of this stuff. So I would hope that they track that and look, I mean, really just get into the weeds to see, because he didn't have a lot of time to go far off the road to get rid of this stuff. So
is there a water source on that route? Do we have a river or? I
don't think so. I can look
it up on the map. If you got water stuff, he tosses that stuff, and
I don't think there is.
I don't know. I don't know.
Phil, I was going to ask you, of the 400 homicides, when you first arrive on scene, you get briefed by the patrol officers. But what's the first thing you do after that? Is there a first thing, or do you approach every scene with a specific regimen of things that you are looking for?
Well, I walk into it, obviously walking into it, I'm making my observations about what I'm walking into. And then once I step into it and get the path to the body, I'm just making mental notes of what I'm seeing as I go to the location of the body. And then once I'm in there, the moment this starts, I've got to let the scene, and I've used this phrase before, but the scene has to talk to me. I have to allow it to talk to me. I don't walk into a scene predisposed. I mean, other than, okay, it's a stabbing or it's, this and that, but predisposed to a conclusion about what happened, how it happened, and so forth. So it's a matter of begin at the beginning, and then as we're walking through it, let things, where are the locations of shell casings if it's a shooting? Does that give me, where is the body? Where are those shell casings in proximity to the body? Does that give me an idea of where the shooter stood? If we know, if we later find out what kind of a weapon that they're using, if it was a semi-automatic and we do have shell casings, and we determine the type of weapon or style of weapon that was used, does that weapon, does it eject casings forward? Does it eject them straight out? Does it eject them to the rear? There's a whole lot of things that are going on, and that's just one piece of possible evidence. So it's a matter of, and I keep referring to a jigsaw puzzle, but it's a matter of walking in. And what's the first thing you do with a jigsaw puzzle? Look, when I was growing up, my mom, she dumped over the, 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle on the table, and here you go. And what's the first thing you do? You turn over all the pieces, right? So that's in essence what we do. We walk into the scene and we start to turn over the pieces. And then what's the next thing you do? You build the frame. So again, the next step is we start to frame what happened at this scene as best as we can tell from what the scene looks like. And then we start taking the pieces and start to fit them into the frame. And eventually we will get, in many, many, many cases, we will get enough of the picture, the pieces in the picture, that we know what happened, but we may have some pieces that the dog ate that we will never get. And those may be the pieces that tell us the why. So in walking into those scenes, that's the frame of mind that I have of walking into one of them. Is I'm getting ready to solve a puzzle. Got to walk in, turn the pieces over, build the framework, and let's start putting the pieces where they belong.
And what about you as an investigator changed the most from case 1 to case 400? I asked tough questions.
The thing that changed was my ability to read the scenes and to start putting together. My brain started kicking into thinking like a detective, and that only comes with experience. I mean, I didn't walk into the first one with the same intuitive decision making that I made in the 400th one. So that experience level through all those cases, and I always tried to learn something new every day. I was never one of those guys that said, "Hey, I know it all. I got this and that." In fact, I used to teach in my classes, if you get around somebody like that, get the hell away from them because they're going to get you killed. So, and that was my Marine Corps experience as well. So that if I was being asked that question, I think, and this is the first time I've ever been asked that question, as a matter of fact. So I'm having to think, what would be the big change, and that would be it. I became a better homicide detective based on that experience and being able to walk in and evaluate and look at what my scene is and give me the direction that I need to go. That can change. I mean, that can change. You got to be, you develop a discernment, you develop a judgment. And I think that is what prevented me from getting tunnel vision. I've seen a lot of cases that have been previewed on television and so forth and so on. And I watch these detectives do the interviews and they end up getting false confessions. And even when it's shown to be a false confession, the detective does not want to say, I was wrong, because they got so tunneled out that they lost their investigative perspective. And if you lose that, you're going to end up putting somebody in prison that doesn't belong there.
You know, going right along as I'm listening to Phil, I'm smiling on the inside because, you know, as he's describing this as an FBI agent, one of the best things that we do is they put us on a task force in New York anyway. And my partner, my entire time I was in the FBI was different NYPD detectives. So I got the privilege of actually being raised as a detective. I went through NYPD homicide school. Every one of my guys, partners was a detective. So I learned things the way that they do it. And it's really just cracking me up because as I'm listening to Phil talk, I have the same exact story when it comes to surveillance, especially surveillance. And surveillance it's like a big giant crime scene, right? You have to be able to walk in or get in your car and go on set and look at the specific things that have to do with the person that you're following. So it was the same way. I got there, I got linked up with some incredible guys. And what I found out real quick was that my particular partner, who I was with the longest, had a strict policy of non-involvement. That was his policy was don't get involved in stuff, right? Because I'm from the South and I was called hero when I was in college because I was always getting involved in stopping something from happening or catching somebody. So we would go on set and I'd be like, well, look what that guy's doing over there. He goes, not my problem. It wasn't his problem because he's focusing on the target, you know? So, and it came down to when you were searching, if the target moved and we lost him, they know that, you know, here's where he was and here's where he's most likely to be. So they would do these types of searches round and round until they got over here and they would have somebody go over there to that house and they would eventually find this guy. So the reason was because they were focused on what the target was, right? So when people say that, you know, they went into and did this search warrant and they didn't find those shoes, it doesn't mean that those shoes didn't exist. Doesn't mean they didn't have them. If they're going to go in there and they search on these particular shoes, there's no blood on them, there's none of this stuff. Well, that's not in their purview then. You know, a good investigator will still be looking at all the things while he's collecting specific evidence, but they're looking for a clearly defined avenue that attaches back to that crime scene. So it's the same thing with surveillance. And you see that, again, if you were around, I had somebody tell me the exact same thing Phil said. We were getting ready to go into the first big arrest that I did. It was a Korean brothel in New York. It was a task force arrest. There's like 40 girls in there and all these Johns were in there. And so we're getting ready. And also a couple cops were involved in this that were protecting this place. So we were extremely heightened. And I'm a, former SEAL and done all stuff. So I go right up to the front. I'm ready to go through the door for the first time in a real major arrest. And my partner came up and he grabbed me and he said, "Come here, I want to talk to you for a second." And he goes, "You do not want to be at the front of the line. You're talking about dudes, you have no idea what their tactical background is. You got guys from ICE, guys from here, there." He said, "This is your first one. I know you're trained better than most people here. Come to the back and watch what happens." And I kid you not, it was like death on a stick. I'm so glad that I wasn't at the front and bullets weren't flying. They were running past open rooms. They all wanted to get up there where these girls were. And so we ended up going through and methodically searching like you're supposed to do as you move through a house. But yeah, it was the exact same thing. If you identify somebody who just is not tactically sound, whether it's going through a house or investigation or surveillance, you need to work your way away from that person and get with somebody who thinks methodically and stays on track with the evidence and what the picture is being presented in front of you.
Shout out to Michelle in Cape Town, South Africa, who says, "I'm never dating a guy called Brian or Brian, both spellings."
Peterson.
or Peterson. Jonathan, back to you since you came in late. This is Justin Woods. This is the person who claims he was in class with Brian Kohberger. And he writes, "I believe BK was a witness to the murders and he orchestrated the crimes and paid the offender to kill them. He spoke openly many times about wanting to witness a crime. Have at it on that comment, Gil.
Oh, well, the only thing I would say is okay.
I mean,
Jonathan?
so what that is, that's a theory, and I'll tell you the interesting thing about this was when I found out that the car went south instead of going north back the route that's the most direct route. When I heard that, and it did make me pause for a second and wonder, was there somebody driving this car? Was there the way the car went around, parked, and he went in the house, it was a quick movement in and quick movement out. It's a theory. There's no evidence that points to that, but it's a theory. I mean, if he really truly talked about that in class, that's something that investigators should know, because that right there shows more motive as to why he would do this. It wasn't just sexual or because he was wanting to target these girls in particular. If he was wanting to witness a crime, that may actually be part of his motive. And witnessing a crime doesn't mean that you're going to have somebody else go and do it. He may be involved in actually the guy who does it, but he's wanting to see a crime scene. I don't know if he ever got to go to a crime scene.
Yeah, that may be. Yeah, that's true. But still, that would not be the motivation. That would not be the why. That would be a sub paragraph to the big why. Because like I've said before, sex, drugs, or money. That's the reason why people kill. And we got no drugs, we got no money. And I'm still on the sexual component here with these girls.
I throw power with these people. I do believe, my drill instructor used to say sex, drugs, and money make the world go round. That's kind of another ironic thing.
Well, that's true too.
He was a Marine. So he was a Marine. And in the Navy OCS, we have Marine Corps drill instructors. So that was his thing, Gunnery Sergeant Crouch. Sex, drugs, and money make the world go round. But power is the thread that binds all those things. And whether he had a sexual connotation to this, he was looking for a way to be dominant. I really believe that his behavior over the years.
That's kind of that's a quality of those three things.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we all, the crime of rape, sexual assault, it has a sexual component to it, but it is about just what you said. It's about power. Yeah. It's about overcoming stuff, or it's about some failing they have within themselves, and then they're accomplishing that failing by committing this act of sexual assault. So,
and I think that's why
I'm not talking about their for the purpose was to go in there and have sex, but there is a sexual component to this, and I think I used Carla Faye Tucker, the gal with the pickaxe with the orgasm every time. I mean, she wasn't in there having sex with anybody, but she was having a sexual event when she was hitting this person with a pickaxe. So, and by the way, last time when I talked about Carla Faye, I mentioned that she was rehabilitated, and there were some comments that said, no, she was executed. Well, that's true, but execute is such a harsh word. So I've decided to use rehabilitate as a.
She was permanently rehabilitated.
Yeah.
So
the Skeeter girl. Go ahead. Go ahead, John.
When we look at going right along with what Phil's saying there, when we look at Jeffrey Dahmer, Jeffrey Dahmer's sexual preference was males, and he killed males. You have Ted Bundy. His sexual preference was women. He killed women. In this case, if this turns out to be that, and the alleged killer turns out to be Brian Kohlberger, he obviously was drawn to women, and then he targeted women. So I agree wholeheartedly that you can't. These are all links that motivate human beings. When you get down to this animalistic person that they are, where gang members kill for money or cred or things like that.
Drugs,
it all comes down to power and drugs. When you look at a lion, and I don't remember if I said this on this show, but I look at these predators as scales of predators that you see like in Africa on the plains, right? You have a lion, which is an apex predator, and if you come up on them when they're killing something, they're not going to run away. They're going to turn and look at you, and there's a chance that you're going to get killed as well. But, you know, there's coyotes out here all the time. So if they're killing something and somebody comes up on those coyotes, they're probably going to run, right? They're killers, but they don't want to get caught. A lion's not worried about getting caught. And so you see the same thing with people who kill, whether it's gang members or mass shooters, versus these other individuals who their whole thing that they're doing is not just killing. It's the whole process of getting in there, getting them, not getting caught, and getting back out. So they're a predator, but they're almost like a scavenger in a lot of ways, in the way that they get in and do this and want to get back out. So with the whole sexual connotation or drugs or money, these people also have this other drive of the whole satiation of the whole process becomes their sole focus. You know, some people get up in the mornings and they desire coffee so bad that they can't start their day without it. These individuals, their whole focus is getting in there and creating this buildup of this thing that they want to do to satiate that. And that is very sexual in nature. It's just
their
animalistic.
Psychology. Yeah, their psychology. They're all going to be different. Joel and I were talking before you got on here, Joel, and I've talked about it before about doing psychological autopsies. We would do, because those folks, they may have some, you know, all these people that kill and so forth may have some certain things that are in common. But you're right. Individually, what we're trying to find out is what brought them to this point. What about them specifically, their experience, their psychology, what brought them to show this as their exhibition of power, whether it was motivated by the three big factors. So yeah, I agree. That's it. It's again, we're back to the big puzzle, right?
And they never try to kill something that's on their level. You never see these serial killers or any of these types of killers picking another person that's their equal size, that's they're not sexually attracted to. Yeah. So, I mean, look at John Wayne Gacy, you know, attracted to young boys. They're smaller than him. He killed young boys, you know. So there is a very weak predator type. I mean, you see lions going after water buffalo that are twice their size, you know, but you don't see coyotes going after a wolf. Typically, you know, they go after rabbits and cats and dogs that get left out, you know. So there's a difference in the way that these predators think, because by and large, a weak person is who will do this. A strong person is going to go out and get a date if they're sexually attracted to a woman. Whereas these individuals, they're weak individuals on the inside, and there's a lot of turmoil going on in there. So they're not going to go up against somebody who basically whipped their ass. That's not going to happen.
You got the predators that are on the varsity, and then the ones that are on the JV.
Yeah. And then the ones that are playing basketball outside by themselves because they can't get on either team. A lot of times these people fit into that category.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the Skeeter girl writes, what if Brian is innocent? And what if the moon crashes into the sun? Always hypothetical. Phil, we still haven't gotten to the details of the unsealed search warrant. So I'm just curious. This is what they found: one disposable black glove, receipts from Walmart and Marshalls, a dust container vacuum, possible hair strands, one Fire TV stick, one possible animal hair strand, one computer tower, an item with a dark red spot, two pieces of an uncased pillow with a reddish brown stain, and mattress covers. Does anything, Phil, on that list, as a veteran homicide detective, jump out at you? Would you want more information about?
It's all good stuff. I mean, you know, that stuff that, you know, they've got trace evidence, they've got the forensic digital stuff with the computers. I would assume they're going to have some of that stuff that they took is going to have some DNA stuff with it. So it sounds to me like they hit they've gathered evidence that looks like it's going to be a part of this bigger picture. And again, I'm going to go back. If they get one piece of that links that scene to the evildoer's apartment, that will be huge. But you don't know what you don't know. So they've gone in and they've taken everything out of there that even if it's remotely looks like it may be a piece of evidence related to that scene, they've taken it. So they knew what they were looking for. I think the Walmart receipt's going to be big. I think the glove is going to be big because I'm sure they're going to take that glove, and let's just presume for the sake of the discussion that it was used. Well, they're going to send that right off to see whose DNA we're pulling off of that. And again, if they link one of those victims' DNA to that glove in his apartment, again, that's huge. That's huge. So it sounds like they've got some good stuff there that just we're waiting to see how they're processing it and see what the conclusions are.
Wouldn't it be amazing though if like the dog hair strand came back to that dog that was killed? The dog, that would be very interesting. Or if the blood comes back to another person who's dead. I mean, these are all things where, just like the Dickies tags, right? They don't just stop because they got a Dickies tag and say, "Oh, he was wearing Dickies." Well, let's put that in the evidence. Yeah. They're going to go back and find out where's that receipt from. They're going to go back. They're going to try to pull cameras and see what color that he was wearing, or what does that SKU say? Does it say black or dark color? So you get a piece of evidence. It doesn't just say, "Oh, we got the dog hair." You know, you have to then create this picture and continue to follow these things out.
And let me say something about Walmart. I've had some investigations where Walmart video was amazing. I mean, to the point that I pulled a license plate number off of an exterior camera, and the car was sitting in the parking lot. And that one clue sent me in the right direction to find the killer. So, and Walmart, they have cameras over each register. So when you walk into Walmart and you're going through the deal and they're scanning your stuff, there's a camera that is taking the shot, and they're seeing everything you're scanning, and they can take that receipt and they can find the exact register that he went out the day that he was there and what he bought. And they can actually see him handing it off. It's not just on a piece of paper naming what he bought. So that Walmart thing.
How long does Walmart keep their video? Are they on the cloud? Like, is that? Yeah.
Well, it would probably depend on each individual Walmart, I would think. Now, I want to tell you, I got Walmart video. I want to say it was about a month, maybe month and a half, maybe 2 months later after the Capitol murder. So, and they may have the servers, and of course, and because it depends on the date of that receipt to the date of that search warrant and whatever that time frame is. And I know that Walmart, at least the ones in Houston that I have dealt with, they've got servers that can retain that video much longer than some of the convenience stores or some of the smaller retail stores.
Gil mentioned the SKU. You guys know important information. I know meaningless information. SKU stands for stock keeping unit, for all of those STS Nation people out there who ever wanted to know the answer to that. Miss Tree writes, 150 people were at the house for a party 2 days prior. And then we see this comment here, Gil, not Phil, but Gil. Could he just say he's been to the house at a party and use that for an excuse? Question mark, question mark, question mark. They had parties where the victims weren't even there. Thanks. I know you're not a lawyer, Gil, but can you dust up enough reasonable doubt by just saying this was a party house and, and this is why he was there?
Oh, I'm sure that's what they're going to. The fact that there were other people called to that house before law enforcement got there is, I can almost guarantee you that the defense is going to go after. They're going to go after that, and they're going to say that that's where that footprint came from if they don't find that in a shoe. So the defense is going to use the fact that this was a transient house. There's no doubt about it. And I think They will try to use all of these connections when it comes to prove, and they're trying to prove that he was just there. He just visited there. But see, there again, his phone, if he has a history of having his phone with him everywhere he goes, they're going to be able to go back, because phone records, unlike video, they're just there. I mean, you can go back and collect toll records for, I don't know, they could probably get it from the, when I was in the FBI and moving around there. I mean, these phone records are stored. So there's a period of time that these things are there. I think they'll be able to go back and see, because he was only there since August, right? He wasn't there, all of last year, just since August. So it'll be very easy to see what his phone tells him. We know that he was by that house at least 12 times. So they'll be able to go back and see if he was at any of these parties. I mean, if it really comes down to this, then the prosecution is going to find out when all these parties were, and they're going to say, well, he wasn't at any of these parties. His phone came here 12 times and moved right back out. So the only time, if they can prove that the only time he shut his phone off was when his vehicle was moving towards and then back away from this period of time where these murders occurred, then they'll be able to make a reasonable assumption that he was never at any, bless you, he was never at any of these parties. So that's the way this works, is that the defense can throw out any fish hook that they want, but if the prosecution, again, that's why they're filling this cup that they can hand the prosecution. Part of your job is to, once you figure out who it is, and the investigation then starts to become evidentiary, where you're collecting these things, now you're building a picture of exactly what occurred, and you're going to forward think a lot of these things that the defense is going to try to do. But again, if it's overwhelming evidence, it doesn't matter what the defense throws out, because
and to that end about the party, for the sake of our discussion here, let's say that it's determined that he was at a party at that house. They better be careful what they wish for, because that is just another link to the evildoer's relationship with one of these three girls, or a couple of these girls. So to say I was at a party, that just puts him there. And it just furthers the analysis that, okay, well, he ordered this anti-pizza, this vegan pizza thing, and where the two of the girls were working, he does this DM stuff with the Instagram account with one of them, and now we've got him present at a party at that house. So that is just putting affirmative links to whatever the relationship was, whether it was shallow, mediocre, or great, at whatever level it was on. So I'm not sure that would be in their favor to say, yeah, I was at a party there.
Right.
Time will tell. A couple more quick comments, and then we'll get some final thoughts and wrap it. There's a little debate going on here. Christina writes, Murphy is a golden doodle, a hypoallergenic F1 hybrid mix. English equals non-shedding breed. Then this person says Murphy is a labradoodle, not whatever the other one said it was, a golden doodle. And then this person comes in, Copper Horse writes, like all breeds of dogs, labradoodles do shed, but they might not shed as much as Labrador retrievers and other double-coated breeds. Phil, did you ever run into a labradoodle or a golden doodle, and do they shed, and can it be used as evidence? Do you have any idea?
My old partner had one of these doodles. I'm not a big doodle fan, whatever the crossover is there. I would just say, I mean, that's interesting information about various types of doodles, but I would say that whether the dog sheds or the dog doesn't shed, I would be hard. I've had dogs all my life. My dad used to raise German Shepherds for police officers. I've had all manner of dogs. Some of them shed a lot. Some of them don't shed very much. But they all shed to a degree. And it really doesn't make any difference if that dog hair, that piece of fur in the evildoer's apartment comes back to Murphy. It will be irrelevant whether that doodle sheds or not.
Mm-hmm. Let me just say this. I mean, see this right here? I don't shed, right? However, watch this.
Yeah.
Right.
There you go.
So I'm not a shedder. I don't go around shedding all the time, but any animal that has hair, if somebody's moving them around, can transfer a hair. Hair comes out, right? So that he very well could have been. And I really do believe that when she heard what she thought was was Kaylee upstairs playing with the dog, I'm almost positive that was him up there, and that he was getting that dog and putting it in the other room. And that's probably what woke Kaylee up when she said somebody's in the house. So if that's the case, he's moving that dog around. It's very likely that he transferred a piece of the dog hair onto him.
Yeah. This is Justin Woods again. He's the one who claims he was in class with Brian. He writes, I do not want to be questioned again by law enforcement, but what I will say is that BK kept several catalog magazines with him, and some of them did contain knife sets and sword sets. Whether Justin Woods was actually in class with, we'll assume that he was. Phil, for you, would it be interesting to know if he did have a fascination with knives?
Oh, of course. I mean, we've already got this connection with, in high school that he was interested in being Army Special Forces, and then he was in the law enforcement thing and all that. So you've got a connection here with military law enforcement type things. It would only make sense that he would be interested in part of that genre, which is going to include knives. So that wouldn't surprise me at all. And there's no telling where the K-bar came from. You can buy the K-bar. I'm sure you can buy them online. You could probably buy them at sporting goods stores and so forth and so on. So it's not like the K-bar is some sort of special knife that nobody can get except for a few people. Those things can be, and I would not be surprised if in those catalogs that the K-bar brand is probably shown.
I think it's also interesting that the search warrant said knives, swords. It said that as well. So somebody else may have said that to investigators that he had these catalogs. They may have these catalogs. So that'd be something that when they question these different individuals, that somebody said that.
Right.
South African Michelle is chiming in saying that there are water sources, and I believe I heard that as well. There is a river that runs either through the town of Moscow or alongside. So,
well, I went and looked at the route. That's what I was looking on my phone, and the route that goes on there, there's only a couple of ponds that I don't think he would stop in the city. I mean, he might, but I don't think he would stop right in the town where everything's at. It gets very rural as you go south. I mean, there's practically nothing down there, just some farmhouses. So, and it's not a long ways around. It's not like he spent hours going around. It's another 15 minutes. But I was following that route while Phil was talking, and there's only a couple ponds down there. But there's a lot of trees and a lot of farmland and places along the road where he could jump out and bury that stuff. If he had that in his mind, that's what could have happened.
Two interesting comments here. People are firing off comments, so it's tough to say goodbye here. And I love both Phil and Gil, but we'll wrap it in a minute or two. But Iris writes, how long does it take to process a vehicle for blood DNA? Followed by Caroline, who writes, how big of a problem will it be if the car is clean of DNA? Phil?
Well, I mean, in terms of processing the car, I mean, hours, to make sure we've got all the evidence, got the thing processed properly. And then it's a matter of developing that evidence and sending it to a lab and having it analyzed. But the second question here or statement about how big of a problem will it be if the car is clean, and everything I've read is that he did clean the car. However, if he's not going to be able to get rid of the presence of blood, Now, there's all sorts of stuff that can be used to show the presence of blood, the old school luminol stuff. We used Blue Star at HPD. There's Amido Black. I mean, there's all sorts of solutions out there that can. Now, the danger is that if you reveal the presence of blood by using some of those solutions, that the DNA will be destroyed. You can't get the DNA out of it. So it's kind of a gamble. There may be some solutions out there now where you can show the presence of blood and still retain the DNA evidence out of it. But if they're going to process it and see if they have anything that can be seen, visible by the human eye. And I'm talking, it could be a minuscule speck. If they see anything that looks like the presence of blood, they're gonna pop that with a swab, and they're gonna analyze that later. So,
and it's also, Phil, I know you'd probably agree with this. I mean, if he went and bought to the extent of buying Dickies specifically for this, well, those Vans that he bought are probably not super expensive shoes as well. So he could very well have come out of that car, taken that stuff off, thrown it in a bag, and put that in the trunk. And even then, he has a possibility of transferring blood as he pulls the gloves off or the clothes off. But he may very well have done that, and there's a chance there is no DNA inside the car.
Oh yeah, sure.
So, and by the way, Jay Thomas, I would recommend if you're going to come on a true crime that you don't use a picture that looks like you're about to kill somebody, because that's a pretty ominous looking shot there.
I would have to agree with that. But Jay is
he's kind of got the evildoer eyes there, huh?
He's got bushy eyebrows too, but he's a friend of the show. He writes to us a lot, so I like Jay Thomas. So, but he writes, and this is, I guess, kind of a good note to end on. Maybe it's easy to pile on to the arrested suspect, and then the investigating stops. Yep, everyone pats each other on the back and goes home. It may not be over.
Well,
I don't think that happened.
His statement is incorrect on its face. The arrest of that suspect is what got the next phase and the more deeper investigation started. So they're still investigating. Nothing has stopped, and it is moving forward. And they are just the search warrants. I mean, things they're doing the things they need to do to make the case better. So Trust me when I tell you, Jay, that nothing has stopped here. Nothing.
You can't look at these things.
To lead you, Gil, is there anything to lead you to believe for any reason that there was someone else involved? Because we keep hearing that.
Well, like I said before, the only thing that would really lead me to believe that is the fact that the car went south. And also the fact that the car was driving around and then parked, and then he went in and came out and got in and out so fast. But, I never rule anything out. But I think the other thing I thought initially before I looked at the route was, could he have gone a southern route and dropped somebody off that was the driver? But I don't think, looking at that route and considering the time that he had to go in, park, and go in and go back and come back out, I'm pretty sure it was probably him by himself. Also, we don't know all the camera footage. The camera footage from Pullman all the way in would probably have captured how many people are in that car. So again, you shouldn't rule out theories. You shouldn't just say, no, he didn't have two people in the car. It was him. You shouldn't do that, but you should look at the evidence, and then once the evidence shows you, then you go with that and kind of let go of those. The other theories.
I don't. When they first put out the Bolo on the Elantra, and they said, we want to talk to the people, we want to talk to the persons. My thought was, well, do they know something that the rest of us don't know? There's certainly a possibility that there may be a second person in that car driving. But now, as it has gone along, and the search warrants and the arrest and so forth and so on,
and he's a loner. There's no evidence that he ever hangs out with anybody.
Yeah, he doesn't have any friends. I mean, he's kind of a loner anyway, and so that part of it I've put to bed fairly quickly. I even with the southern route, I think that was just that was his escape route. I mean, he's planning this thing, and he just does a diversion thing, maybe to dispose of evidence and so forth and so on. But I don't think I think I kind of go back to the old axiom, the old Hell's Angels axiom, right? The best kept secret among three people is when two of them are dead. So I would be hard pressed to think that he had somebody helping him.
Yeah.
And they have just remained silent. And I guess as they process things, and it may be something that points to somebody else, but I think this is a solo operation.
Best comment of the day comes from Nancy Chart. Love your channel. Jonathan Gilliam is a career public servant. He was a Navy SEAL. He was an FBI special agent. For all I know, he was a barista at Starbucks. This guy has done it all. He's got the book out over his right shoulder, Sheep No More, and the kids' book, The Adventures of Team Little Bigs. Gilliam, is it over, or are there going to be twists and turns before June 26th when we've got this case hearing?
It's interesting you asked that question, because I would like to give this judge a round of applause, because it's opposite of what you're seeing in the Brian Walsh case, where, I mean, they get a piece of evidence and they can't wait to get that out to the media, Whereas with this case with Brian Kohlberger, I mean, that judge is locking things down. And I think the judge is because it's a smaller community, and the judge is very concerned about tainting a jury pool, right? Any further than they already are. And there's been constantly, every day, new and salacious things coming out. It's either coming out from internet sleuths, which there's not much a judge can do about that, or it's coming out from one particular family, their attorney, and their quote unquote investigator. So the judge clamped down on this, and I think it was a wise thing for them to extend that gag order into the family attorneys. And if I was in the family, I'd be really concerned about that judge narrowing down on me as well. And I find it also interesting that the reports have gone, an investigator close to the case is releasing a lot of this information. I'm almost positive that whoever this private investigator is that was hired probably has contacts with the police force. I also saw another video where an FBI agent supposedly told his wife, who is a friend of this girl who's a podcaster, and she put out all this information about the number of stabs and all these things. I mean, this is what you don't want to do. It's very unprofessional. And we have to remember that, as weird as this sounds, this isn't just about convicting the person that did these killings. It's also about giving a fair trial to the person who's being accused of doing these things. And all these leaks that are coming out for the news sake, they really do hamper both of those parts of justice. He needs a fair trial, and if he's guilty, he needs to be convicted. And when you throw attorneys in that mix, they're going to do everything they can to skew it their way, whether he's innocent or guilty. And so all these superfluous things that are going on have a real effect on that. So I was happy to see that this judge did this. What I'm going to be most interested in, though, is that if somebody somewhere looks in Pennsylvania and in that area and starts to find out that there were unsolved murders of women that were killed with a knife, and then see if that starts progressing. That's what I'm most eager to see here. I think they're going to convict this guy with the evidence that they've reported, what was in the affidavit alone. I want to see if there's other stuff out there. That's what I'm most curious to see. And I don't know when that's going to start coming.
The man with the blue wall is America's most respected detective. He spent decades in law enforcement, and he had 400 homicide cases. He's a Marine and is the owner of Kindred Spirits Investigations and the star of the show, The Interrogator. Phil Waters,
Ta-da.
game over or twists and turns to come? Oh, game over, or are we still going? Are there going to be twists and turns, do you think?
Oh, you're talking to me?
Yes, sir.
You mean for the evildoer here?
Yes, sir.
I think if they're, I think they will continue on, and they're going to gather every piece of evidence they can find. I don't know. I don't know that there will be twists and turns. I think there will be, as this thing gets closer to trial. And I agree with Jonathan wholeheartedly. I applauded that judge the minute she put this gag order in place, and she did it fairly quickly, which was wise. And I did see the thing about somebody's investigator, and I was just like, I mean, you're out here. I mean, I had this happen with cases I've worked where people go hire their investigators. Of course, they contact us, and I very respectfully tell them that you can come in and have a cup of coffee and then be on your way. I can't imagine that and relationships that I have with people that I call all over the country, all over the world for that matter. They know me. They know that I'm going to respect the confidentiality of what that discussion is. So I would be hard pressed to believe that this investigator, if he has violated that he'll ever get any information out of those detectives ever again. Mm-hmm. But I don't think we'll see twists and turns necessarily. I think what we will see is we will see the missing pieces put in place, and we will have a better, more robust picture about what happened and why it happened.
And I take it back. This is now the best comment from LK. How do we forensically collect Jonathan's beard hairs? That's with
just send me for let me come up with a price.
He can mail them to you.
1997. I will send them to you. There you go. I think there's an electrical charge if I connect these. I don't know.
Yeah. A quick programming note to everyone. You've seen his movies. Alec Baldwin, he's in the news. He's about to get charged with involuntary manslaughter. We're going to do a live show on this on Sunday night. In a sentence or less, Gil, is Baldwin going to face prison time?
Well, I would say if it was myself or you two, yes, because he is a Hollywood star and he lives in Hollywood. He may not, but when you know how they treat these weapons in Hollywood and the fact that that gun was used for target practice earlier that day, I don't know if he was involved with that. But when they bring that gun back and then they load it and he points it at them, I mean, again, this is kind of a cut and dry case, because that's the way that Hollywood works. You would think that they have guns that they set to the side and they're not used for anything else. But I have a feeling that there were some things going on, because one of the comments the detective said was they knew that he was going to be charged when they interviewed him. So that means that he told them something along the way that was pretty damning.
Phil, your take on that?
Knowing what I know, and remember, this is just what we know. I really do not try to speculate on stuff like this. And you may be a little bit surprised in my answer. I am a little surprised that he was charged criminally. He's definitely going to be held liable civilly. And I know they charge him with involuntary manslaughter in Texas. If he were to be charged criminally, if I were working this case, I would submit that the DA charge him with criminal negligent homicide. And so that removes intent. It removes the reckless component. It is just it's negligence. It was something that he perhaps didn't understand about the handling of that particular weapon, what the results might be. And he was handling it in a manner that he's always done, but may not have been the safest way to handle it in the given situation. But I've seen the video up to the point where he's about to fire the weapon. I think his biggest problem is he can't keep his mouth shut. He never should have gone on television and conducted an interview and saying, I didn't pull the trigger. That is absolute lunacy. I mean, even in this little video, his finger is clearly on the trigger. Someone had to pull the trigger to make the weapon discharge. If not him, then who? It wasn't some, gremlin on the set. So I am a little surprised that it has been being charged. I get it that they're doing the involuntary manslaughter thing, which is reckless, not intent. Well, I'm assuming that's what it is under New Mexico law, but it is under Texas law. So,
does he see the inside of the jail cell?
I don't think so. I mean, I can't imagine unless the DA is trying to give some sort of answer to the family who may be calling for something like that. I know decisions are made that way a lot, and that doesn't necessarily mean that, sometimes, I mean, look, I operated for 33 years enforcing the law by its spirit, not enforcing it by its letter. Not everybody needs to go to jail. Not everybody needs to go to prison. And there needs to be a balance of justice and mercy. So if justice is what we deserve, then mercy is what we need. And so I would say in this case, and I'm no big Alec Baldwin fan, trust me, no big Alec Baldwin fan. But if I'm looking at this objectively, as I did for 33 years, there needs to be a balance here. They're going to go ahead and charge him criminally. Now they need to be looking at it, I believe, from what we know about the case, through the eyes of the spirit of the law. What is the law in its spirit say we need to do here? Can we operate within that and still make the point and still offer some form of punishment, some form of justice that will hopefully bring about some measure of peace for the family? So it's a balance here, and it's not just because it's Alec Baldwin. I don't think. I mean, that may have some effect on it in some way, but it clearly didn't for the DA. They charged him. So
and what's the lesson in all this? Always say, "I want an attorney." You don't have to talk.
Well, he didn't. Well, but Jonathan, he was on television in an interview with a reporter. I mean,
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Like,
even in the interrogation room,
mouth shut. Keep your mouth shut.
Even in the interview room.
That was now, Jonathan. Don't be saying that kind of crap, man.
Words of wisdom.
I always gave them the opportunity to speak with Detective Phil. Always.
Yeah.
We are going to go in depth on Sunday night, 7 p.m. Hope you guys enjoyed your True Crime Phil with Phil and Gil. They're probably going to leave me in a few months when they get their big TV contract for their own show. But for now, we'll enjoy it. Love you, America.
Peace.